Hi all, let's look at the amazing game in round 7 which occurred between Vladimir Kramnik playing white and Mamedyarov playing black. So Vladimir kicked off with d4 and Mamedyarov played knight f6 after c4 e6. So will it be a Nimzo engine or a Queen's engine territory? Well, actually knight f3 was played and we have d5, knight c3. Now quite a popular third choice, bishop b4 was played here. I mean, this is known as the Rogozin system, the Rogozin defense. So where there's an early bishop b4 rather. So bishop b4, c takes, e takes, quite theoretical, bishop g5, knight bd7, queen c2, black plays now c5, so this has all been seen before, e3, and now a queen a5, which you might find a bit surprising, putting pressure on c3, but it's the most played move. Bishop d3, and now again you might find this slightly surprising for releasing the tension in the center. Black actually plays c4, and this is 411 games in live book, so still very theoretical. Bishop f5, black castles, white castles, rook e8. So you can see black has got good pressure on e4 here. Knight d2, that's the main move. Now black plays g6, and quite often the bishop just goes to h3 here, but in this game bishop takes d7, which has been played quite a bit before as well. Knight takes d7, and usually white prepares something like e4 later. Rook a e1 is usually played, or f3 again, another idea to try and prepare e4, because with black having released the tension in the center, playing for e4 seems quite thematic. It's an idea stemming from Mikhail Botvinnik. He used this plan very successfully to break with e4 if black released the tension. There's a famous game against Capablanca which has a similar theme as well. So in this position though, quite unusual, is it has been 33 times in live book played before, h4, so a very interesting move. Usually now black plays knight b6, 18 games, or f6 is 10 games, but here we see b5 and we're kind of out of book now, so the turn arc and bits are here. So at move 15, white to play. Okay, so out of the opening, after this b5, it does seem as though it's tempting to play a4, and white does play that, so immediately threatening a takes b5. Black now plays bishop takes c3. After b takes c3, the idea is revealed, b4. So this generates actually a passed pawn here if white's going to play c takes b4. But if white doesn't, then b3 is actually another passed pawn, quite dangerous. So Vladimir in this position plays what the engine's like as well, actually, just c takes b4. After queen takes b4, white enjoys pressure down the b file. He does a very neat maneuver though here. I wonder if you can guess it first before using the b file. A very neat positional move indeed, which actually the engine's like as well. If I gave you 10 seconds here, what would you do? You might want to pause the video. Okay, an undeveloping move, but with a vengeance. The knight coming to c3 is better than on d2, putting pressure on d5. So queen d6 in advance of knight c3. Knight c3 played now. So white enjoys some b-file pressure at the moment. Black now plays queen c6, rook fb1, and now we see bishop a6. So black's pieces with the queen on c6 and the rook here is focused on trying to discourage e4. If that's a break from white, it's looking unlikely to be played at the moment. White now plays queen d1, and it looks as though queen f3 would be nice to put more pressure on d5. Black now plays f6, kicking the bishop. It goes to f4, and now we see rook ad8, and the queen comes to f3. So maneuvering, putting pressure on d5. This bishop looks as though it's not so good in this position at the moment on a6. We see knight f8, putting support for d5, and with knight e6 now on the cards, will be an interesting centralizing move. Black actually, white now plays bishop h6. So white's plan potentially, with the pressure on d5, he's free to double rooks on that b file. That could be quite annoying for black. An unusual looking move now is played king f7. It lends support for the f6 pawn in some variations, and it means now knight e6, although that interferes with f6 protection from the queen, the king is now protecting f6, so it makes knight e6 more possible, for example. In fact, after rook b2, knight e6 is played. Vladimir now doubles rooks. At the moment, no easy entry point on that b file. Knight g7 now, and it looks as though knight f5 is on the cards to hit the bishop and the pawn on h4. Vladimir actually thinks this is worthy of preventing with g4, and here the king actually drops back to g8. I think white was also now threatening things potentially on the king side. Not yet really, no. Any g5 gives up the f5 square. Anyway, so the king dropped back, queen f4, and now, believe it or not, king f7. Looks like a waiting move, as though black's happy to see what white is doing here. How can white actually improve his position? It looks as though without any entry point, any clear entry point, this is going to be tricky. What can white actually do? If he, it looks as though rook b8 might be technically possible. Would it lead to anything? Okay, it doesn't outright lose, but is it a big deal? Knight e6, queen g3. Black could respond, say queen c7 here. Trade things off. So anyway, white actually now, Vladimir actually plays e4, which may be a little bit on the ambitious side. It can undermine this structure, which could be weaker now on c4 later, or create a dangerous pass d pawn. For the moment, black attacks the queen, knight e6, and we see now that in this position, this is very interesting now, queen e3 is actually the preferred engine move. If, for example, d takes, then we play d5, much better for white. So that is actually technically possible. Interestingly though, Vladimir doesn't play that. He plays a more controversial continuation, e takes d5. So after knight takes f4, d takes c5, you might think, why is this controversial here? He had also another opportunity in this position before he has to take the queen, rather. He has to take the queen back, but with the knight attacked, so you might think, well, why has black done this? There's a tactical reason, a very important tactical reason that black has done this, and it's the position of the bishop on h6. Can you see how black can now win that bishop? If I gave you 10 seconds starting from now, what would you play with black here? you might want to pause the video. Okay, black plays g5 and the bishop is threatened with king g6 down. And the other point is that after hg, fg, if bishop takes g5, there's knight h3 check. This would win the bishop. And this is not actually bishop takes g5 is not actually played though in this particular position. First c7 is played, inserted, attacking the rook. Sharp position indeed now. If rook c8, this wasn't played, if rook c8, then actually rook b8. And what is going on here? If, for example, rook takes c7, rook takes, king takes, now white has time for king f1 and is actually threatening the g5 pawn, so this is a bit hairy. Black is actually slightly worse here. White's doing well here. So rook c8 does seem to run into this. You might think, well, what was wrong with king g6? Here, this is actually very, very dangerous because the king actually is leaving e8, making these rooks more vulnerable, and actually d5 is a strong move in this position. So if we take the bishop, then d6, two connected passed pawns gaining in strength hugely, with white threatening d7. So Mamedyarov had to play a very technically precise move here, ideally, not rook c8. He actually played rook d6, which the engines give us about equal. In fact, it seems that an even better move might be, in theory, rook d7. This is like tricky for supporting rook b8, bishop c8, and this is just very technical stuff like this. Rook takes c7 and black should be okay. But okay, rook d6 was played, which should be about equal as well, at least for black. And we now see bishop takes g5 and this tactic knight h3 check. So black's going to be a piece up, but white has these dangerous pawns after d5. Rook b8 is a simple threat to have to deal with. Black prepares for this. He plays actually bishop c8. Now rook b8. So 5 pawns for white, 2 for black, so 3 pawns for the piece. But g4 is loose here. Black actually in this position dare not take on g4 right now because rook takes, rook b8, and here just queening is okay for white to be better. So black actually plays here rook f6. He wants to try and put pressure on g4 with things like rook f4 instead, to leave the bishop on c8. Vladimir gangs up now on c8 with rook a8, so potentially now rook b1 to b8 is now on the cards. Rook f4, so we have a very dramatic situation. Are white's pawns worth the piece? f3 is played now, and black now takes with the rook. In fact, engines suggest knight takes f3 might be an interesting alternative to this. If rook takes, knight b5, this is dangerous for knight d6. King e7, d6 check, king d7, knight takes a7. It looks very, very dangerous for black, but in fact black should be okay in this variation. More than okay. In fact, white would be forced to play rook b7 here. That's the more accurate move. But black's surviving this, and to be slightly better. So anyway, in the game though, knight takes f3 wasn't played, rook takes f3 was played, and technically best apparently is rook bb8. What does black do here? This would actually be about equal. Actually, rook takes c3, rook takes c8, check, and just carry on the check here. Because if king f4, then knight h3 is a mate in 2, like this. So just carry on the checks, really, and that's a draw. So, in fact, Vladimir doesn't play rook bb8, inviting that draw. He plays actually d6. This is pushing the position quite hard, potentially for a win. One clear point, I think, is rook takes c3, there's rook takes c8, and we'd be queening the pawns with d7. White would be better here. White would escape the checks, and he's going to queen a pawn. So, in this position it is dangerous, but black is not obliged to take on c3. Black actually plays the stronger, much stronger move, bishop takes g4. We have a very dramatic position now with these two pawns, very dangerous. Vladimir takes on e8, after king takes, check. The king doesn't want to go to d7, because then c8 queening, whoops. So it goes to f7, and white now wants to get both pawns on the 7th. He plays rook d8. So the idea d7, trying to queen pawn still. Black here throws in the check. This is the very, very strongest move actually in the position, bishop h3 check, from an engine perspective. Very, very strong move by Mamedyarov in this position, very accurate move. Anything else, then d7 is going to be good enough for white technically to hold this position. This kind of thing is just a draw by perpetual. Okay, so bishop h3 immediately is played, king h2. And now, very scary stuff indeed. Black snaps up another piece, so 2 pieces up. Really dramatic position. One of the more dramatic positions in the entire tournament. So 2 pawns for 2 pieces. d7 is played. Are the pawns triumphing here? Well, again, black has to play mega accurately. If knight e6, for example, then we queen, and that's brilliant. That's brilliant for white. So black actually plays check, and here there's mating nets around. If king h1, then knight f3, and we've got this mating net on h2. And if white plays rook f8, king e6, rook takes f3, you might think, doesn't that make the coast clear? Well, actually, black now plays bishop g2 check and actually snaps up the d7 pawn and is miles better, winning, absolutely winning. So after this rook c2 check, king h1 is stepping into that knight f3, and that's losing. So king g1 is even worse. That's just a mate in 2 with knight f3 and rook h1, rook h2, pardon me, checkmate. So the only move really for white, king g3, We're building up the drama here. Rook G2 check. Now here, if the king steps to F4, then black has time for knight E6 check, and knight takes C7. And you might think, well, white can actually force a queen here tactically with rook F8. The queen here against the free pieces isn't so hot. Black's also got this pawn. Technically, this is all right for black. Tricky, but technically, you know, after rook c2, that bishop's immune. This is okay for black. Technically, it's going to be harder for black to play though, usually, to coordinate all the pieces. But apparently, black's doing okay there. So actually, Vladimir, he avoids king f4. He actually played king h4, which technically might not be the best scientifically accurate move. But as humans, we want to win games of chess, and we don't expect our opponents to always play the most accurate responses to every move that we play. So it's okay, Vladimir was after more here, but actually in this position black played an absolutely perfect move. The engineers love this move, bishop e6. Okay, so what is going on here? Well, let's see. If white queens, then it's a mate in 2. Knight f3 check, king h5, rook h2 is checkmate. So that's a great point behind bishop e6. It sets up this mate in 2 now. So it's a mating net being set up on c8. So white has to play something else, not c8. White plays rook f8 check. And here, with black to play, black has to play extremely accurately still. I believe Mamedyarov said he thought Kramnik was on the verge of resigning right here, and just played this token last check. It's such a it's a bit of a tricky position. The two dangerous passed pawns versus the two pieces. Okay, what would you do here if you were playing black? If I give you 10 seconds, you might want to pause the video so black's play. Do you want to try and work out the best move? Okay, now in the game king takes f8 was played, and this might not actually be the best. Well, it's not the best from an engine point of view. Actually the best is king g6, which kind of deprives the white king from h5, so black is actually threatening now a mate in 1 with rook g4. That would be checkmate because the knight's handling h3, the king's handling h5. There's a mating net here. You might think, well, okay, why wasn't this played? Well, we'd have to look at rook g8 check. Now, if bishop takes g8, this is only drawing. We can queen either one, and actually, what to say, bishop e6, we've got checks here, and we can take this one, ouch, and queen this one. So, so in this position, it's pardon me. In this position, after check here, bishop takes g8 is only drawing, but black has another fantastic move in this variation. Black has king h6, So still now threatening knight f3, a checkmate in 1 because the king's holding the h5 square. If rook takes g5 in this position, then black can play check, forcing king g3. And here, simple, bishop takes d7 to knock out the pawns and stop the other one attacking that rook. And this is a great position for black. Rook g8 is simplified. Rook a2, and black's doing very nicely. 3 pawns up potentially. Once white queens, we can just give the bishop back. 3 pawns up. So, yeah, with king h6, delicate king h6 here, all of black's problems seem to be over. This knight f3 is a menace, and rook g5 just fouls. But yeah, it requires super precision in this position. Basically, nothing less than super precision. But yeah, after rook f8, Mamedyarov actually he took on f8, and maybe the reason he expected Vladimir to resign is maybe he was checking out, for example, d8 queening. This doesn't work too well for white to queen with the d pawn after king f7. The problem is here that there's no immediate useful checks. Knight f3 is still threatened with a mate in 3, actually. For example, c8, knight f3, rook h2, and then mating like this. So this position, there's no useful checks, and if queen d1 trying to prevent knight f3, king g6 is strong, and this is apparently this is winning for black, this position. Check, for example, king h6, queen d1. Let's just show this, knight f3. Check here. Check. We win the queen, and we're still stopping the other one queening. So it seems d8 actually it loses for white, but Vladimir played the much stronger c8 queening with check, and this changes the picture quite dramatically. Now king g7 was played, perhaps slightly better as king f7, but still white would have the advantage now. On king f7, white is threatened with this mate in 2 here, but has a very good move available in this position, which is actually technically stronger than queening the other pawn. If we queen the other pawn, well, it's actually a forced mate with knight f3 again. So queening the other pawn is not a good idea. But here, king h5, believe it or not, saves white. Unbelievable. If bishop g4, for example, king h6, this saves white. White's not getting mated or anything. So c8, king f7, king h5 is winning. In the game, Mamedyarov played king g7. So we've still got this menacing idea of knight f3 check, and then after king h5, rook h2 mating, so mating 2. But great move now available. Using the c pawn is so much more different than the d pawn when queening the pawns here, because can you see what white can do to escape, like James Bond might escape? So white to play. What can white do in this position? If I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, only move. In fact, Queen B7. It not only threatens D8 queening with check, it holds that F3 square. It's important to keep the D pawn. If we played Queen A8, then this is just actually it's technically okay for black. It's going to be hard. Black can give up the knight. It's important to keep the queen on B7. So we're threatening D8 check with another queen. Mamedyarov must have been very annoyed with this position. Must have known he blew something big. He played knight F3 check. That's taken. After check, king just goes to G5. It's not being mated. H6, the king goes to F4. Check, king E5. And it's totally hopeless here. White is actually threatening not only queening but also queen F6, picking up the rook. So it was a huge missed opportunity, a very dramatic moment of the tournament where, yeah, black had it kind of in the bag, so to speak, at this level, but needed to find this kind of mating net idea with his own king to put it on H6. Easier with people with engines to do it in a theoretical sense than over the board, that's for sure. So instead of king takes F8, king G6 would have been great. Then king H6, and this is just winning for black. So a missed opportunity there in round 7 from Mamedyarov. So Kramnik must have been feeling surely a bit lucky after that one in round 7. A little bit on the lucky side, I guess. Okay, hope you enjoyed that one. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.